Committee. Pursuant to Chapter 30 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting of the School Committee will be conducted via hybrid participation. We will post an audio recording, audio-video recording, transcript, or other comprehensive record of these proceedings as soon as possible after the meeting on the City of Somerville website and local cable access government channels. We will do a moment of silence and a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Dr. Carmona, will you call the roll?
Dr. Ackman.
Here.
Mayor Ballantyne.
Present.
Ms. Piton.
Here.
Mr. Green.
Here.
Ms. Dion.
Here.
Ms. Barish.
Here.
President Owen Campen.
Here.
And Dr. Phillips.
Here.
Mrs. Scription.
Here.
We have quorum.
Thank you. With that, I will introduce our interpreters. Spanish, will you unmute yourself and introduce yourself?
Good evening, this is a Spanish interpreter, Tracy Pichardo. Buenas noches, esta es el intérprete de español, Tracy Pichardo. Thank you, gracias.
Thank you. And Portuguese, please unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Good evening, my name is Adelaide Richardson. I will be your Portuguese interpreter for this evening. Boa noite, meu nome é Adelaide e eu vou ser sua intérprete para essa noite. Obrigada.
Okay. That brings us to the Student Advisory Committee. Do we have any of our student advisors here on Zoom? Okay, if they do show up, please let me know. With that, public comment, we have one person listed for public comment, and I will read our instructions before we do that. Welcome and thank you to those who have signed up for public comment. Speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to present their material. However, the chair may limit comments to 2 minutes based on the number of individuals signed up to speak. Speakers should begin their comments by stating their name, address, or, in the case of district employees, their role within the district. The chair of the meeting, after a warning, reserves the right to terminate speech which is not constitutionally protected because it constitutes true threats that are likely to provoke a violent reaction and cause a breach of the peace or incitement to imminent lawless conduct or which contains obscenities. Public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between the public and the committee. Members of the committee will not reply to public comment in the course of the meeting, though individual members may follow up and items from public comment may be taken up in future meetings. The school committee will not hear personal complaints of school personnel nor against any member of the school community in public session. Individuals may address topics on the agenda or items within the school committee's scope of responsibility, such as the district budget, goals and policies, or role of the superintendent. The public is encouraged to submit comments in writing for inclusion in the public record. With that, I will call up Ryan Williams.
Thank you. Ryan Williams, 47 Kingston Street in Ward 7, President of the Somerville Council of PTAs. In PTA business, I do want to bring positive news to the district. We've won 3 nationally competitive PTA grants, bringing money into the district. West Somerville won PTA Connected. It's on screen readiness and digital literacy. The Winter Hill community won STEM grant for hands-on engineering design challenges, and the council won a STEM grant to create a citywide science festival. So you'll hear more on those events, but I'd like to applaud all those organizations. My other comment is on the K-8 master plan. Thank you, committee, for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm speaking to urge the city to increase the transparency around the K-8 master plan process. While we are all rightfully welcome the invitation to the MSBA process, we should not forget the path that brought us here. It was educators and parents who filled this chamber last March with their heartbreaking descriptions of their daily school conditions. And it was the school committee who voted for this mission of the statement of interest. Thank goodness for that. So now we find ourselves 24 hours away from that crucial first public meeting, and those same people who gave those prescient warnings that led us here are now in the dark about the fundamental aspects of the plan. Parents, educators, even the duly elected representative of the school committee have not seen the plan yet. We are left to speculate, to share rumors, to compare notes, and to read between the lines of emails and press releases. In building projects I've worked on, the process starts with the occupant needs, and I urge you to ground yourself with the parents, principals, teachers, students, and the school committee who best knows our schools. We've celebrated this MSB invitation as a victory for the Winter Hill community, but we should not forget that very, very few members of the current community will get to enjoy that new building. They will endure another 5 or 6 years of disruption, while I've had lovely walks on the community path, holding my daughter's hand and talking about school. Many of them are going to endure 2,000 frantic car trips to their new school. The Winter Hills community has met this challenge with dignity and resilience, but let's not confuse their grace with approval. The city needs to understand that we have to fundamentally repair the breach of trust that was created regarding our school facilities. When we create this information vacuum, it gets filled with suspicion. Tomorrow night is our next chance to begin to restore that trust. To restore that trust, we do not need to hold finished documents in secret and make decade and century-long decisions behind closed doors. What we've set up for tomorrow is an asymmetric meeting where the city has the information and the answers, and the attendees have no idea what they're walking into. At a session that is supposed to solicit community input, the community will not have time to digest, research, translate the information, or to formulate a thoughtful opinion. We need an earnest attempt at public input and comment, not a marketing campaign. I'm urging you to release the master plan to the school committee and the community so that we can have a thoughtful, informed discussion about the future of our schools tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. With that brings us to the report of the superintendent.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you had a dry night. I know that we had a storm passing by. Luckily, in none of our buildings, we lost power, and so far, the reports that I have received have been positive. I think that we had some flooding outside of the Capuano, but as far as I know, I think we did well. Thank you for everyone being here, and I hope that families at home also have some dry basements, so that's all we can wish for at this time of the year. So I wanted to give you an update in regards to a memo that I shared with you that was provided by MSBA the day after we received the positive that the SOI for the Winter Hill was approved. So we had a meeting on Thursday, and we basically on that day we were provided a project manager for through the MSBA. So I believe you have that in your documentation. I just wanted to bring attention to the chart, the eligibility period of a schedule of deliverables. I just wanted to walk you through those set of deliverables so you have an understanding of what's coming up. And I'll start with the initial compliance certification. So that's a document that, as far as I know, the mayor, the chair, and myself, we need to sign to basically endorse the process or the beginning of the process. And this process basically starts in April around April 4, and ends on November November 2024. So we have a chunk of time to actually make sure that we provide all this documentation to MSBA. The other piece that is due around May is the building committee. I think we need to make sure that that is part of the process of engagement with the community. I know we're in the process of securing the CBI, which is the Consensus Building Institute, that is also helping us with the community engagement process. But MSBA has a very set of expectations around what constitutes the members of the MSBA process. So, but that is due around May 3rd. We also have an educational profile questionnaire, which is basically a robust document that requires that we state what is our understanding of our enrollment, what are our needs, what are our challenges, identify what are some of the private schools also that might draw from the number of students that we have. And so that's a document that is mainly an instructional document that is required. So I'm counting on the school committee at some point to support that process. It is due, and it's due on June 3rd. We also have an online enrollment projection, which is due around the same time. That is basically assessing our original assessment of enrollment. And that we will have to provide to MSBA our finalized numbers. They also will bring their assessments and also provide them an understanding of any buildings around the community that might impact those projections, as well as the private schools around the vicinity. Then the maintenance and capital planning, which is around August 30th, that basically is providing a history of how we actually provide maintenance to our facilities in the district. And then the last two, which are around the 270-day, is basically a vote to secure the funds that are needed for the feasibility study. We actually have already done that. We don't have to actually do the vote, but I think there is a technical issue in terms of the paperwork, so we'll have to go through the motions of the vote, but the funds have been appropriated already. And then that's the feasibility study agreement is basically, that's when we also have to provide certain documentation to MSBA. That is the last part of the cycle of the first eligibility period. So, when I talked to Sarah, who is our project manager, she said basically it's not like you are being eligible, is that you already are part of the MSBA process, but there are all these pieces that you have to actually complete in order to make sure that the process runs smoothly. They are very thorough. After the day that we were approved, the next day we had a meeting, and there are a set of meetings that they will be putting in place to make sure that we actually stick with the deliverables. So that's that.
All right, I will open it up to questions. Ms. Barish.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Can you just, my understanding is, based on what you just said, that it's not really an eligibility, it's, we're part of the process now. So is the expectation then that, assuming we complete all of the steps by the deadlines, we will be invited to move forward with the project, or is there some sort of competition with the other communities?
Yeah, no, my understanding is that once you have the SOI has approved, you are basically in the trajectory to either renovate or build a new building. And that's why when I ask her, this terminology is throwing me off, and she said, yeah, it's called eligibility, but that's basically, we're guiding you through that process.
Ms. Patel?
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just two quick questions on funding. The vote that has to happen in this eligibility period is about to fund the feasibility study, correct? It's not for the whole construction, and that vote is by our city council?
Again, that is to secure funds, but the funds have been already secure. So in talking to Rich, he mentioned to me that given a technicality in the documentation, I guess we're just going through the vote, but Mayor, you might.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Just high level, there are two entry points to the MSBA process. It's the feasibility, which is what we are in. There's another entry. Some communities can go ahead and fund their own feasibility study, which is what we said back in 2022. that we would fund the feasibility because we weren't sure whether we could get in, regardless of whether we got accepted to the MSBA. The second point to enter into the process is when it's actually the project. And those are, as my understanding, those are the only 2 times. We have already set money aside. We did that last year in 2022. I just want to repeat it because I've been consistent about this, is we set the money ahead in 2022 for the feasibility study, so we wouldn't be held up and we would still be on that trajectory to be able to enter into the MSBA process on the construction side.
Thank you. And just to clarify for the big picture, obviously we're all in the weeds, everybody else isn't. The Prop 2.5 is later in terms of funding construction, and that's way later in the process.
Yep.
I wouldn't say, that's not Prop 2.5. You're talking about a debt exclusion.
Okay.
So Prop 2.5 means on the municipal side, we are required by law not to increase our operating budget more than 2.5% each year, year over year, plus new growth. Anything beyond that, then we have to go to the voters to do a debt exclusion. And I know that Ed Bean, our city's finance director, has said also, publicly, but that would require us to go for a debt exclusion, we would assume.
Yeah, thank you for the correction on the terminology. I think I was meaning the same thing, but you have clarified it. But from the standpoint of the community, the understanding is that is to fund construction, and that happens later, and that is a ballot measure the same way we did the high school. And so that's not something that's happening in the next 12 to 24 months. That's something that happens later in this process. So I just want to make sure that the whole community understands that. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, which is, will there be a point person in our district who's in charge of making sure that all of these get filed when they need to be filed?
Through the chair, that is a good question. So, Mayor, is that something that...
So I have not been part of the MSBA process, but I would assume absolutely there's somebody that's charged that works with the project manager over at the MSBA. I'm assuming it's going to be someone in our capital projects team.
Mr. Green?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To that point, I think we should also have someone on the school side liaisoning with the city and stuff to make sure that educational, all those things that aren't necessarily the city's first language don't fall through the cracks, to the point where I'd be willing to suggest that we fund a consultant or find someone whose job it is to work on with the city on these things, because I know that our central office especially is pretty heavily taxed already.
Just as a follow-up to that, just so you know that part of this feasibility process too is to have a school building committee. So part of that school building committee, it's very detailed on the skill set that's required to be on there, like finance director, capital projects, a PM, the other technical consultants, in addition to a member from or members from the community, and also a school committee representative. So there are technical people that are also required and that will be following this through.
Mr. Green?
Through you, again, appreciated and understood. I also understand from the last time we went through a new building process, it would probably behooved us to have someone on the school side who is constantly in those weeds, because the building is beautiful and an architectural marvel. But I think there are things in hindsight, if we had to do it over again, from an educational perspective, we'd have done differently. And so, in the concept of always trying to learn from the last process, I would still say it makes sense for us to think about having someone district side whose job it is to stay in those weeds in a way that central office just can't, realistically.
Dr. Phillips?
Thanks. Through you, Chair. I think Member Green makes a great point. Mine kind of follows up on that and also on the mayor's. My question is twofold. One, what power does the building committee have? And who decides to name the people on it?
Mayor?
Through you, Chair, the MSBA identifies who needs to be on there because you're not just having residents be part, you actually need to have technical expertise on there. I think, well, I did ask the question, who else can be on there? It's like a member of what? Well, you're on it, right? For the high school, there's like 10 people or 11 people, right? Oh, yeah, 13 or 14 people on that. So it's outlined by the MSBA.
Dr. Phillips?
Follow up on that. So what decisions does the building committee make versus the other bodies?
I didn't hear the question.
But what decisions does the building committee make?
I'll let your rep, who is school committee member Pertone, who is on the building committee for the high school, share back.
I will do my best because I am the third member of this committee representing the school committee. So Steve Royks was the original member who was part of the design process, and then Carrie Norman was leading the construction. I kind of had the tail end, which is a lot of yelling into the wind about things that did or did not get done. But so I can't really speak to, my understanding is that they're guiding the decisions about where to invest. It's a lot about money, but I can't speak to the actual experience. So I would defer, I apologize, to the actual write-up that says what their responsibilities are, because I haven't experienced that.
Dr. Phillips?
Apologies, just a final follow-up. If we could, at a future meeting, get kind of an overview of how this project is getting managed and what is the role of the building committee and what power do they have, I think that would help clarify for people who are looking to have input in this process. Who are they trying to have input with? Like, if I have no power, they should not be talking to me, right? They should be going right to the building committee. I don't know what's true or not, but if we could clarify that, that would be really helpful.
And Mayor?
I do know that, thank you for that point, but through you to the entire committee, it is also my understanding that this process has been well respected across the state to also include community process. It's a requirement of that. So, yeah, I'm sure our project coordinator at MSBA can share that back.
But by the way, I invited her for a future meeting, and she said she doesn't participate in these kind of processes. But she said if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them directly to her. Just to double check on the question, so what is the role of the building committee, and what was the next part of the question?
What power do they have, and what's the management structure for this project? So, for example, is Rich Raish leading it on the city side? Who's on the district side? What's, who's doing what?
Ms. Patel?
Yeah, I'm through you to Dr. Phillips. I do know that we hire someone. The city does hire someone to administer this process. The school building committee, the person who got hired was Tony Parentazzi for the high school. So he had been the former superintendent, and he came in to do this work. And he facilitates the committee. So I don't know, that's not everything, and I'm trying to do a little research while we're talking, so.
Mr. Green?
Probably the easiest way for someone who doesn't want to deeply immerse himself in construction management to understand it is the building committee is functionally the board of directors for the project. And as Member Patel pointed out, for the high school, the city also hired former Superintendent Parentazzi to chair the building committee and basically manage the committee. And as part of the process, as it gets further along, we will hire, what are they called? Yes, thank you. Who will manage the actual management of the process. To the mayor's correct point, the MSBA process is generally regarded as a very good technical process that keeps politics out of building decisions, which is probably more or less, that's a good thing. Knowing the Somerville community and our active and vocal community, we probably do need to, over the next couple meetings, really flesh out how public input into the process, especially in the early stages, is going to play out.
Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Dr. Carmona, our next item.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to share some information from the report that I included in your packet. So I just wanted to share something about the food market visit that I had the other day. I was really very proud of seeing the fact that our district provides such a support for families, and I'm just going to read a couple of things that I wrote here because it's a very compelling work that is being done, and I don't know if it's been highlighted in our community. So I wanted to highlight the ongoing partnership with Food for Free school markets. And Food for Free school markets are free food markets that are open to the community. They look like farmers markets, but function like food pantries. Throughout the school year, we host monthly food markets for Somerville school families to provide a convenient way for parents and caregivers to access healthy and delicious food for their household while picking their children from school. Families and community members are able to pick up fresh produce and shelf-stable necessities free of charge, even in the summers while the schools are closed. The markets take place on weekdays at elementary and middle schools throughout Somerville. Hosting markets are part of our cross-departmental collaboration and are part of our efforts to meet our families where they are in an equitable manner. This month, I attended a recent market at East Somerville. At this particular market, we serve 170 families, which represented roughly 300 students and 400 adults. The next market will be Thursday, January 4th. I would like to thank our Somerville Family Learning Collaborative Department, the SFLC, staff, volunteer coordinator Jen Capuano as well, who reached out to her volunteer network, and all the volunteers from all walks of life who came to support the market, including Tufts students, SPS parents, SHS students, SOIA staff, and other community members. I really invited each one of you to join us for such a democratic as well as genuine family process, and it really made me proud of being part of a community in which it wasn't just any, like usually when I remember being in other districts, we used to give them a little bag of food. This was a real pantry with, a very well-stocked facility. So I'm really excited about this, and I hope it's only once a month. I wish we could do this more often, but it takes a lot of human power just to make sure that this happens. So thank you to all of you who make this possible, and also I want to let families know that this is, again, we will do it once a month. I'm going to have Dr. Boston Davis share another message.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm delighted to share that 7 Somerville CTE students represented us at the Skills USA Fall State Leadership Conference on November 19th in Marlborough. These students spent a jam-packed 2 days with CTE students from all over Massachusetts, learning about leadership and then competing in leadership events. And as always, our students represented Somerville High with excellence. So the following is the list of students who represented us and their medals. Stuart Adam won first place, gold, for technical skills presentation and display. So he won 2 medals. Lucas Da Silva. Veronica Flores, second place, silver, for workplace skills presentation. El Gis, first place, gold, for technical skills presentation and display, 2 medals. Timothy Jones, third place, bronze, for community service presentation. Haley Machado. Timothy Jones, third place, bronze, for community service presentation. Sam Ryan, third place, bronze, for community service presentation. And in addition, 5 of our students also earned their leadership pin and credentials for this conference. So, yes, let's pause. I always go too fast. Very very excited that we'll have the director of CTE, Jim Hatchie, here in January, I believe, at a school committee meeting to talk more, I'm sure, about this and all of the great work that they're doing at the CTE program. And I'll turn that back over to you, Dr. Carmona.
Through the mayor, just one more celebration here. I was earlier this month. I had the pleasure and the honor to be in Washington with Steve Marshall, the principal of the Washington School, to receive the Blue Ribbon Award. Ouch. Sorry.
That's okay.
The Kennedy
You're
School.
reading.
The Kennedy School, sorry. And then, so we received the Blue Ribbon Award. And this is a recognition that is quite unique. Out of all the schools in Massachusetts, only 7 of them received them. I think the mayor and I were there at the ceremony, and when the Kennedy School was basically raising the flag. So I think it's something that we share, but I think it's something that I wanted to highlight. Is usually the reason why you end up being a Blue Ribbon School is because you meet achievement gaps. You actually not only in academic performance, but in growth and for different subcategories as well. So that's a recognition that is worth celebrating. And not only that, when you go to this ceremony, you are competing with private schools. And it's not a competition, but is schools across the entire United States. So it's a great celebration, and so just join me on congratulating the Kennedy School.
Can I just add one comment to that? Thank you, Chair. So just to my colleagues, how many K through 8 schools do you think exist in the country? It's over 1,000. Pardon? Yeah, it's over 130,000. So then, of course, I did the percent. I mean, we don't even, we're like 0.002%. So that it's a huge honor. It's a huge honor to get this award.
Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mayor, for the comment. And we're going to finish with some recognition for the winter concerts that we have had throughout the district. So, Dr. Davis.
Thank you, through the chair. So yes, we just wanted to give a shout out to the hard work that all of our educators and our students are doing, putting on the winter concerts. We're in the midst of the winter concert season. You know, we've had an art exhibition in partnership at the high school. I bought a beautiful vase for my office. But it's just really remarkable to see our students at all of our schools play instruments and sing and learn to read music and perform in front of a large crowd. It's been really amazing to see. We've tried to represent from the executive committee, have somebody to be at each of the concerts so that we can kind of share in that and learn, share with one another what's been presented. And just so we want to give a shout out to them and just, you know, enjoy celebrating the winter concert season.
Thank you for that.
That's the end of the report.
But we still have to do the calendar and the weather preparedness.
Great. Okay, so
That brings us to the 2024-2025 school calendar, which I believe is Dr. Boston Davis.
Thank you. Through the chair. So I bring before you the first draft of the 2024-2025 school year calendar. And as has been past practice, would offer or ask you to consider, you know, what things I need to bring back and revise before bringing the calendar before you again in this new year to be approved. I just wanted to give you a couple of notes on the design of the calendar, things that were taken into consideration. As you can see, this is a new format. My goal here was to partner with a graphic designer, somebody who thinks about the way information should be presented. Not only is it visually nice to look look at, but also just thinking about how do we clearly share information, especially in light of a change in our calendar. So given the early release Wednesdays next year, I wanted to make sure that that was very clear along with all of the other information, and so the graphic designer thought carefully about color choice and things of that nature, and also thinking about the crowding of the page, and in order to make sure that it is clear as possible. So that will just kind of give you an overview because the format is slightly different than years past. So that said, the calendar clearly reflects the new early release Wednesday schedule, as those are indicated in light blue. You might notice that all holidays have been removed from the front page, or I should say from the first page, except for those which the observance of the holiday results in school closure. So as a specific example, you'll notice on October 14th of 2024, there's no school, and it's indicated there for Indigenous peoples. The reasoning is the observance of Indigenous Peoples Day, whereas over the December winter recess holiday, or December winter recess break, there are holidays, but they are not noted on the front page of the calendar. So that was just thinking about what holidays we're putting on the front and why. And so the only ones that are indicated on the front are because they require school being closed. You'll notice something that I think I heard when I came in. You'll notice that the last day of school is currently Monday, June 16th. So there are some considerations before you to see whether that should be, in fact, the last day of school. You might also notice that in December of 2024, the first day of winter recess is Monday the 23rd. So that was a choice that I made in presenting this. I looked at what, there were very few other school districts in the area that have approved their 24-25 school year calendar, but the two that I found, I noticed that they did in fact have that Monday off, whereas you could approve bringing students back for a noon dismissal on Monday the 23rd, which would then make the last day of school June 13th. If there were no snow days. So that said, I thought maybe it wouldn't be the best use to bring students back on knowing very well how it feels in December, right before break, bringing students back that December the 23rd. So I went ahead and marked that as the first day of the winter recess. But that, is a decision for you to make. And I believe that is it from my notes on what has changed and what is the draft before you. And so I would be delighted to entertain any questions and get any feedback.
Start with Ms. Barish, then Mr. Green, then Dr. Ackman.
Thank you, Dr. Boston Davis. I did notice that that winter recess, starting on the 20th at noon, and I absolutely understand the rationale behind that. Can you confirm, I think the 20th being a half day is part of the teacher's contract, right?
Through the chair, yes, I confirmed. I checked in with all of my dates with Karen Woods, who knows that, who knows the contract very well, and it is through the contract that we need to make the day before that December break has to be a noon dismissal.
Okay.
And that's same true to be for the before the Thanksgiving break in November.
Can I just follow up? So on the other end of winter recess, we have the teachers here for professional development on the 2nd, and then students back on the 3rd for a single day, which also feels kind of awkward. So it's I mean, and I know it's just the timing of the holidays, but that's definitely something that I would encourage another look at, although I don't know that having the teachers come in on Friday for professional development is a great option either. I mean, that just seems hard, and then have students come back on Monday. So anyway, I was just looking at that and thinking that it felt a little awkward. The one suggestion, I love the color coding. I don't see it, and maybe I'm just missing it, but because our early release schedule, which is very nicely written at the bottom, says noon for pre-K, 1 o'clock for K to 8, et cetera, is there somewhere where the dismissal time for half-days is noted to be different? Because that would be a noon dismissal, right?
Yes, through the chair. It's a little bit confusing. So the half-days, as indicated by the circles, are all noon dismissal, which is the case for this year. Any half-day Wednesday is a noon dismissal. And the days before Thanksgiving recess, December winter recess, the first day of school and the last day of school, as this year, are all noon dismissals. Where it gets a little bit confusing is that half-day, so noon dismissal versus half-day, that terminology. Half-days at Somerville High School are a little bit different. And so prior to bringing this draft before you, I tried to say, well, what if we could? And I think it's a little bit more complicated than I don't know if it's necessary on this, given past practice. Because in years past, it was not, the Somerville High calendar days were not indicated on the calendar as they are now. So, all of that being said, the long and the short of what I've just said is the circle, as indicated by half-day, are all noon dismissals, and on the calendar it should say noon dismissal at every circle. Just in the key it says half-day.
So could we just put noon dismissal instead of half-day in the key? Okay, great.
Mr. Green and then Dr. Ackman.
All right. So I have 3 quick points. One, I guess, academic, one design, and one cultural. Academically, I don't think they're, like, the things you're talking about as trade-offs, I think you made the right calls. I don't really want to spend a lot of time on trying to pick which of the deeply imperfect solutions we go with. I trust my academic leader to have made the right decision based on what's in students' best interest academically. So, like, I'm fine with all of those. As a design note, because the noon dismissal circle is blue, and because the first day of school color is blue, it's hard to tell that the first day of school, which is a Wednesday, is a noon dismissal. So, like, if one of those colors could change so that'd be clear, that would be great. And I'm always thrilled that every year we seem to be doing a better job of highlighting and being cognizant of the multicultural nature of our students and their cultural observances, and that is great, and I appreciate this much cleaner way of listing it. But it's always trying to be better. The thing that occurs to me is we as a body have gotten better over the years about trying to be mindful. Like, we wouldn't have a school committee meeting on Rosh Hashanah, for example. We've learned that. We wouldn't have graduation, as we almost did one year, on Eid. But not all holidays are. So one, I would love to highlight in this list, which those dates we as school committee should be mindful of, with the caveat that we also know that not all holidays are made equal. So I think the first step would be to identify which of these days, because they're on a Monday, might be potential conflicts for school committee, and then really talk to the communities in question about, is that a day we really shouldn't be meeting or not? I think of, for example, as a Christian, Epiphany. As a Christian from North America, fine, because that actually is the day we're currently scheduled to meet. I'm fine with that as a Christian from North America. It's not a holiday that like, if you had a meeting on Easter, I'd be offended, but on Epiphany, whatever. But it's also Three Kings Day, which is a huge cultural holiday for a lot of our Spanish and Portuguese-speaking students and families. And if they wouldn't feel if it was appropriate for us to meet on that day, we shouldn't meet on that day. So I'd love it if we could take some time to try to dig into how being culturally aware of other people's traditions should affect our meeting schedule.
Did you want to respond? Okay.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. And for the first part of the feedback, absolutely, I agreed. I circled that before you even said it's hard to see, especially Erica Garcia, who is brilliant, said, well, let me photocopy this for you so you could see what it looks like with photocopies, because that's what they do at the school. Don't just print it out one time. So it's good to see what it looks like photocopied. What's that? Well, they will be full color. They're colored at the school, but they're photocopied in color. And so there are certain actually details that I'm noticing now, looking at the copy, that are not the case if I were to just print it off. So that's Erica's brilliant mind, so thank you, Erica. And noted on the school committee calendar dates, I think we can cross-check with the tentative dates or whether they're tentative or not, the dates set for the next school year, which I have not overlapped them, and I can kind of alert the chair based on anything I see. I'm remembering in years past, there were some conflicts, and so I can kind of alert, but, based on what I see, and then also, obviously, as one person, if the body can also do the same, that would be helpful, I think.
Great. I have Dr. Ackman, then Dr. Phillips, and then Ms. Matone. Dr. Ackman?
Thank you. Through the chair, this has grown so much and so beautifully and so thoughtfully since you have taken it over, and I cannot thank you enough. Hiring the graphic designer was great. There's a lot of wonderful visual flourishes. Forgive me if this has already been clarified, that PD day on the 2nd, that is in the union contract?
Yes, that is contractual.
Okay. Yeah, I am objectively, I agree with my colleague member Green that, it's the best worst scenario, but I do think that on January 3rd and June 16th, there will be, the buildings will be markedly less full. But I assume you've looked at every viable option.
Dr. Phillips?
Thanks. I too think this is a great improvement in the calendar and appreciate all the work that went into it. Seems like we've changed our religious policies a little bit, so just wanted to check, right? Sounds to me like based on what's here, it would be totally fine for a soccer coach to schedule a soccer game on Yom Kippur, or a track coach to schedule a track meet on Easter, which is a change from prior years. So wanted to clarify that.
Thank you, through the chair. So I understand what you're saying. What happened was on the first page of the calendar last year, there was a clause that said something to the, I'm paraphrasing, can't remember verbatim, but it said something along the lines of, should take every effort to refrain from scheduling one-time events on the dates listed on the calendar. And now, because those dates are removed, that is also removed. That said, the policy has not changed, so I have to think about the best way to go about that. The wondering is if it belongs on, I guess the bigger question for me that I don't have an answer, this is a genuine question, is what is the purpose of the calendar? And what are the multiple purposes of the calendar, and what is it helpful for, and what might we use another resource for? That said, perhaps I have to think about that, because what that would require, I think, is to add back in those holidays. Here's my thought process. I'm thinking as I'm going. We couldn't add a clause like that on a page like this. There's a lot of holidays, some of which span over a month. Collide with MCAS, for example. There are things that are unfortunately unavoidable. That said, we should be aware of high holidays, of very big religious events, cultural events, and refrain from scheduling one-time meetings. So what we could potentially do is add that back. It does then again present the it requires us to then choose which holidays we're selecting to put on the front. which was a choice that happened in the past, and something that I'm cognizant of. But I'm trying to think about how we tackle the very point you've raised without doing that. So let me continue to think on it. I think it's a really great point. I appreciate you raising that. I thought they kind of said the same thing, so we can just get rid of it, but I understand exactly it doesn't quite say the same thing. And I'd offer any other thoughts or feedback on that as I think through. Obviously, I was thinking through this whole statement, but it's a great point. Thank you.
Did you want to follow up?
Super minor, right? I kind of think you could do something if you revised the blurb at the beginning of the second page and made some marks along, but your best thinking will be great.
Just a clarifying question. When you say make some marks, do you mean on the front, on the first page, or like asterisks next to the holidays as we've discussed in the policy?
Yeah, I was thinking asterisks. I mean, I think like the same point that Mr. Green is making, right? Like any holiday where we wouldn't have a school committee meeting, we probably don't want sports teams playing. And to your point about like where's the best place to put it, I think I'm not a communications expert, but I am a parent in the district, and I feel like the more different ways you all tell me something, like it's in the handbook, it's in the calendar, I get an email, then I finally get it. So.
Ms. Patel?
Thank you, through you, Chair Krepchen. Thanks for this approach. Thanks for rethinking this and relooking at us. Just like a small note, and I could have probably told you offline, but I think Rosh Hashanah is October 2nd through the 4th, not September. I think it was just a slip. And I only looked it up because many years people have come to me and kind of had that issue of making sure that their kids didn't get big events on those days. And so I trust you to think about this, because it's the question about, we used to asterisk them, we used to talk about which ones were at sundown, and trying to make it as refined as possible, but sometimes when you make it really refined, you make it cluttered. So I think the next time we look at this, just a little more on, we've changed. There's, other than a visual layout and a cleanup, are we providing the right kind of information, particularly to staff? For the staff to not be like, oh my goodness, you sent me a list of 4,000 holidays and I can't do anything on any of them. As opposed to, I think what Dr. Phillips said is, there's particular ones that have a sensitivity in terms of people not being able to be available to do homework. I mean, the bottom line is it's about students and respecting their practices, and being clear to educators. So educators are kind of like, okay, I can't have a science fair on this particular day. That's a bad idea. So anyway, so when you make a change in design, there's an impact, obviously, and so thinking about what we gain by making it cleaner and what we lose by losing some granularity. So I don't have particular opinions, but I just want to make sure that we're thinking through all that.
Ms. Dion?
Mr. Baton just messaged me a good point also, that some people are red-green colorblind, and maybe we should, I don't know, maybe use a different color for like the PD days, so as not to be visually confusing for anyone that has that like color blindness.
Dr. Ackman?
Through the chair, does this, I just assumed this goes through 508 compliance. Am I mistaken with that? Do you know what that, I do that a lot in my day job. No, okay, so 508 compliance is like a federal standards, not requirements, for making colored reports visually compatible for people who are colorblind, who have other visual impairments. And so, but blue and green are often used in 508 compliance. So I assumed that, like, part of it was looking at the color scheme. I assumed this was 508 compliant, but I guess to that point, I would make the request that it's worth, it doesn't take much to go, like, to have someone formally review it for 508 compliance, like either find a consultant. I assume our communications director has access to something like that, but I thought that was something that was happening. I would make a request that that happens.
Thank you, through the chair. So thank you for the feedback. There's a good chance it is I worked with a professional graphic designer, so perhaps, but it's not something we discussed. It's not something that I will say that was considered in past versions of previous year's calendars. We just kind of picked a color and went with it. So this is the first year that we're, really thinking about the colors in the logo, and thinking, it was a number of conversations about color and things that are, outside of my usual conversations when talking to the designer. That said, it's a great point. I'll bring it to her and just confirm whether it is, in fact, 508 compliant. Thank you.
And then I just have two small things, which is just that the early release Wednesday at the bottom feels like it should be the lighter color blue so it matches the Wednesdays. You noticed that already?
Thank you. Through you. We have two versions of the calendar, one with the lighter blue and one with the darker blue, and I just asked a couple of people which they visually preferred, but I can bring both versions next time.
I mean, it pops out nicely, so maybe you consider, whatever color it is at the bottom, it should match what you have on all the Wednesdays. I don't necessarily have a preference of what color that is, it just seems like it should match. And then my other comment is just that under December, you list 23rd district offices open, and that feels a little confusing because I'm sure that, Christmas Day, New Year's Day, they're not open, but some of those days during the week they are open. So I don't know if you want to just list which days they're open or how you want to do that. I just noticed it's a little confusing that it just says 23rd district offices open. So just to flag that for you. With that, yes, Dr. Phillips?
Sorry, super minor point, and actually about our meeting schedule through 2024, so call me out of order if it is. I just noticed that the April 22nd meeting, we have like 3 or 4 meetings that day, and it's Passover.
Okay. Thank you for that heads up. We will make sure to look at that. If there are no other questions, we will move on to the weather preparedness memo. I know that Mr. Mazza is sick, couldn't attend, but does someone want to give us a quick update?
Yeah, I can go through the report that he put together. I think you all have been through some form of weather cancellation, a school cancellation. All of you have little ones and probably already have experienced that. I cannot promise you that we will have no cancellations this year. I know global warming, unfortunately, is conspiring against the school cancellation process, but I just wanted to share with you that is a multi-factor process that is actually requires the support of not only the district, but we in collaboration with the city, law enforcement, and we try to make sure that we make a decision that is going to be always centering the student safety. But once it is done, we try to do it always on a timely basis, and I know that in conversation with Jeff, I think he tried to hold up as much as he could in terms of calling school cancellation. So we will try to remain with the tradition, and unless there is any feedback that this body has for me. But again, safety is number one, but we also want to make sure that instruction remains intact. And we know that often school cancellations have an impact on the trajectory of the week for students. So I'm going to move to the latest star. We always try to actually have a 2-hour latest star. So and the intention of providing that information the day before, no later than 8 p.m. That is what we try to do. Unfortunately, when the weather is unclear, sometimes that might be a little bit later, but we aim for the 8 p.m. The other thing is around outdoor activities. We always want to make sure that kids are outside. Cold weather is good for them for the most part, and so only in cases when the weather is below 10 degrees is that we have indoor recess. But for the most part, we want students to be layered and to be outside, ideally enjoying recess in whatever way it is. Snow is great, but I know we have some challenges in terms of snow removal in many of our areas in which we have rubberized surfaces. That's something we're trying to figure it out, because there is they cannot be shovel or plow or the snow removal process has to follow some guidance, otherwise we can lose the warranty that we have in those surfaces. But again, we encourage every student to be outside as much as possible. And the other thing is that we also try to make sure that we provide as much support for families that don't have the resources. So we also do drives in every school to make sure that winter clothing is available. And so we also want to make sure that if anyone has a question about that, SFLC is always a place where we can actually provide information, as well as we have a community liaison, Jennifer Ochoa, who is the person who can provide some information around that. So the email for her is jochoa, O-C-H-O-A, at the k12.somerville.ma.us. So please, again, for families, don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any needs related to the weather or any other needs. So that's the report for the weather preparedness. I don't know if you have any questions.
Dr. Ackman?
Thank you. Through the chair, I think this is to the superintendent. It's not about this per se, but our chair has worked hard to get the school committee on the email blasts for each of the schools. That has been consistent for some, not consistent for others. One of the ones that has been consistent has been the East, and they send weather alerts that I would love to see, if possible, done across every school. Like if it's raining, just like it's an automatic blast reminder that entry to the school looks different on a day in a morning that it's raining, things like that. I know this isn't exactly like, it's weather adjacent, so I'm gonna make the ask, but in the ideal world, like school committee sees all of them, but what I'm asking more is, if possible, having all of the principals set something like that up, because it seems like it would be beneficial for families, in this person's opinion.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I believe that concludes. Oh no, we still have a personnel report from November. Is there anything you would like? Oh, Ms. Patone, did you want to ask about weather? Okay. Anything about the personnel report you'd like to highlight?
Yes, a couple of things I wanted to highlight from the report. Again, in alignment with our policies around promoting internally, we want to share that we have several paraprofessionals who have moved to the role of teacher, and so that's Paula Chavez, Cody Turgeon, and Laura Ellis. So congratulations to them. We really, usually paraprofessionals provide such an invaluable resource and support, and so every time we can support them to continue their careers is really a win-win for all of us. I know that Scale is actually trying to support a pipeline of paraprofessionals, and so that's the future plan that we have, but hopefully we can continue that process. I also wanted to just highlight a couple of promotions. So Maria Moniz, she was promoted to cafeteria manager. Vivian Rivera, she is an account clerk payroll, has been promoted to account payroll. And Tiffany Rankinson, she also has been hired as the AFA secretary. So congratulations to our new members of the community in their new jobs. That's it as to the report.
Ms. Patone?
Thank you. Through the chair to the superintendent. I just had a question about how we manage particular leaves of absences, particularly staff that are very specialized. So we have a leave for a substance abuse specialist, and it's short. Sorry, forget that one. I was confused. Apologies. No, it's a while. Going back to that one. So we're losing a substance abuse specialist for several months. We're losing several music teachers for several months. And so are some of these roles, often we try to absorb, I understand, which is not ideal, but are some of these roles things that we can kind of hire someone to backfill to make sure that we can continue to make progress, particularly something like a substance abuse specialist, which I think is the only one we have. It's just some thoughts. And if you don't have an answer right now, I totally understand.
Through the chair, just a clarification. You asked me what is the plan to replace someone who has gone on a parental leave or just any kind of leave? Or
It's in terms of the work. You make the decision of how the work progresses, but I'm concerned when I see a role like a substance abuse specialist, which is a very specific skill set that's going to be gone for several months, which they all have the right and the authority to be gone, and that's great. But how do we backfill that work in any way, or does the work just freeze for that time?
I can just say a couple of things in terms of, we are actually right now looking at our attendance patterns because part of that also has to do with folks who have gone on maternity leave. I have to say that, teaching matters, educators matters, and quality staff is critically important to the point that in some cases someone is irreplaceable. Is that right? And so we try to account for that when it's a clear-cut replacement. There are some cases in which someone, if someone is on a medical leave that you still cannot hire for that because they're in and out. That is a complicated case in which you lose you lose the benefit of having that person consistently in the classroom, but you cannot replace that person because they're in and out. There is, on a daily basis, all of us are impacted by this ongoing patterns that, if someone leaves or someone is on maternity leave, you won't be able to replace someone with the same quality. Ideally, you would, but it's just the reality is that training takes, we spend a lot of investment as well as times and resources to train folks, and so that is hard to replace. I know that in some cases, some principals have come to me and said, listen, I have this situation in which this is an unclear situation when it's a medical absence, that it might be a long one. And so we don't have a contingency plan to have someone like idle as an extra person. I think the only thing I can think of is when you have a building sub in every building, having a floater or having different floaters. It's just a matter of also funds, but I would say that we don't, for specific absences of qualified individuals, if it's a clean cut replacement, that's a different story than if you have someone who is in and out for which you don't know when the job needs a replacement or not.
Any other questions about the personnel report? Mr. Green?
Yes, I see with great joy that we've hired another school-based social worker for the round in Healy. I know that was a place we really wanted to invest. I know there's a massive shortage of social workers nationwide. So I was curious to know, are we full up? Or do we still have vacancies for social workers? How are we doing staffing those positions?
I could not tell you right now if there are any specific gaps that we have across the board. I know that we still have some positions that haven't been filled. But I know we recently met with the SEU to talk about social workers, and I believe that we met most of the requirements. There's always more need, is that right? But it's also, there's a contractual challenge in terms of, you all agreed to a budget that I also have to abide by, and so we cannot just hire someone middle of the stream without having an approval process. And so as far as I know, we met most of the needs that were stated by the SEU.
Mr. Green?
Absolutely, and if there's demand for more, we can sort out an extra budget. I just know that people have been struggling to find social workers, just as a country, and I just want to make sure we weren't having that problem, or if we were, if there's something we need to do.
The only thing, to the chair, the only thing I can say is that we reach out to Cartwheel, that is is a company that actually is out of Cambridge that provides social working as well as counseling services. And so we're entertaining the idea of doing some work with them just to get a sense of how that works. I know that most of their work is online and they have a no waiting list policy. So that might help us build our capacity. But I know that not all the kids actually work well online, so that's, but that will increase our capacity, but we're exploring that option at this point.
Okay. With that, that brings us to the report of subcommittees. I have 2 ed program reports. I will entertain a motion.
Move to approve? Or move to accept, whatever.
I think it's accept, yes. Move to accept. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Ms. Batone, to approve the 2 ed programs reports. Are there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries, which brings us to unfinished business. We have a bunch of policies for a second reading and then a couple of policies to be removed from our policy manual. We did discuss them at our last meeting, so unless there are any specific questions about them, I will entertain a motion. I would propose that we do 2 different motions, one to approve the changes and then a separate one for the ones we're removing.
I move to approve the proposed file JIC, file DJE, file EFE, file IGA, and file DJA.
Second. I have a motion by Mr. Green, seconded by Ms. Dion. Is there any discussion? Ms. Patone.
This may just be an oversight on my part, but I can't find the curriculum adoption and development combined in the packet. I wonder if it was just in the packet.
There's a bunch that's in the last meeting's packet that
Okay.
aren't in this meeting's packet.
Okay.
I've been struggling with that myself.
I know there's been a lot of transition, so I understand that. Okay.
My apologies for that. Ms. Barish.
I'm also just noticing that what's listed on the agenda is file IGA, but it's actually a combined policy. It's IGA/IGD that we would be voting to approve.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that that was a typo, and I'm sorry that I didn't notice it sooner.
Are there any other questions? Yes, Ms. Patone.
Apologies. I still, maybe I'm looking at the wrong names, but I still can't find the combo one, so I'm struggling with trying to, give me a moment.
In the interest of time, we can vote on the other 4, and we can simply table that one to our meeting in January.
I would appreciate that, thank you.
Yep.
Yes, so I will accept that amendment because I know I've read the proposed combined one. I don't see it either.
So to clarify, we are now voting on 4 policies: file JIC, file DJE, file EFE, and file DJA. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And we will table the IGA one until our first January meeting. And now I will entertain a motion about the removing of 3 policies.
I move to remove file EBC/R, the evacuation policy, from our policy manual.
We can do all 3 at once.
I would prefer not to. Because
Okay,
let's not remove those 2 until we adopt the
yes,
replacement.
I got you. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, thank you for clarifying that. So we are just voting on the evacuation policy. I have a motion by Ms. Dion, seconded by Ms. Patone. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to the school committee calendar, which is just for your information. Dr. Phillips did already bring up an issue in April. Are there any other? Yes, Ms. Parrish.
Yes, and I apologize for not noticing this sooner so that I could just let Ms. Garcia know, but it looks like rules is listed as having 2 meetings every month. We only need 1 meeting. I mean, unless my colleagues want to have 2 rules meetings every month. So I can send Ms. Garcia a note just suggesting which dates would be best.
That would be perfect. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, that brings us to a resolution for Ms. Dion, which I will now read. Actually, Ms. Barish, would you like to read it?
Oh, gosh, okay, sure. I just have to find it. I've got it.
Whereas Ms. Dion was elected in a contested election to represent Ward 7 on the Somerville School Committee, and whereas Ms. Dion has served diligently in her role for 2 years, consistently looking for new and creative solutions, and whereas during Ms. Dion's term on school committee, she has been a member of the Rules Management and Educational Programs Subcommittees, as well as the School Buildings and Maintenance Special Committee, a joint subcommittee with City Council. And whereas Ms. Dion has been motivated by and for student voice, and whereas Ms. Dion has passionately advocated for optimal teaching and learning environments, and whereas Ms. Dion has enthusiastically solicited community input on the work of school committee, let it therefore be resolved that this well-earned resolution be included in the minutes of tonight's meeting and that a framed copy be presented to Ms. Dion.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Ms. Parrish, seconded by Ms. Patone. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to a diploma. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the high school diploma for Justin Skeet.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Ms. Patone. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Great, motion carries. Congratulations to Destin. Next, I have a field trip. I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve students from grade 7 and 8 from the Healy School to visit the Big Apple in Manhattan, New York. I don't know if it's actually a thing. A Big Apple. Travel via bus. The cost will be $400 per student, and funds will be raised to cover student cost.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Ms. Dion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. That brings us to grants.
I move to accept all federal entitlement and continuation grants and all state continuation grants awarded to the Somerville Public Schools, including from the state, the Mass Cultural Council STARS Residency Program grants for Somerville educators applied to support their schools and programs. The Capuano is $4,150. The Healy is $5,950. The West Somerville Neighborhood School is $4,150. The Winter Hill School is $4,150. These funds will be used to continue a program in partnership with local artists to use puppetry, music, and art to deepen students' social, emotional learning skills. And I stop there.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Mr. Green. Is there any discussion? Mr. Green?
I just want to say, as someone who has in the past been a reviewer for the grant for the STARS residency, Somerville routinely is the city that has like the most schools applying and getting these grants, where this speaks to our long-term commitment to arts programming for our young people. So go Somerville.
Always wonderful to hear. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Now we have some donations.
I move to accept with gratitude a donation from Mary Ann Sullivan of Somerville for $500 to the community schools after-school program.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Ackman, seconded by Mr. Green. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. With that, we have items from committee members. Dr. Phillips.
In the past, after we finished a round of office hours, we submit a report into the record with what folks told us. So, if you have notes from your office hours, please send them my way before the end of break, and I will put together a consolidated report.
Thank you for that. I have Mr. Green.
Actually, to that point, I was actually going to propose that since so many of us had difficulty having virtual office hours, that we might try again in the new year.
I think that is a wonderful idea. Ms. Patone?
Through you, Chair. I just had 2 items that came up in office hours that I wanted to bring up of concern. One, I did email the superintendent and Assistant Superintendent Mazza about concerns about crossing the McGrath to the Winter Hill at the Edgerly. So at any point that there's an opportunity to just, at this point, it would be helpful to know what has transpired between the district, the city, and state, regarding the status, because in this office hours, we happen to have our state senator, our state rep, and the city councilor. So it was a coordinated one, so everybody's kind of on board to see what they can do to advocate. So if anything can be shared with me, like with what has happened so far and what conversations have happened, that'd be super helpful. But I also just wanted to flag that that's a concern that was coming up in office hours. And the second item that has come up to me, and this may have moved, and I apologize if this has changed since I've heard about it, is the status of access to the high school field. I will also bring it to the building committee, but there's been concern and questions about, we had a beautiful ceremony honoring the honoree former high school track star, blanking on the name. What? Rivas, Phil Rivas, yes. That was lovely, and there's just questions about, well, what's going on? And what's the timeline in terms of being able to turn that over to allow the high school to utilize that field? So that would be super nice to get an update on that.
Thank you for that. And I just have a quick update, which is that we are working on our minutes. I know we are behind, but the hope is to have at least a few of them for our first meeting in January. Any other members from board members? Mayor.
So I had the opportunity to host I do at various times host some of the high school students, and they asked me some questions which I could not answer. And one is, which I'd like to share back. Others were a lot of opinions about the city side of services. But they were asking me when the high school health curriculum would be updated to reflect all students in all genders.
Does you want to speak to that?
Absolutely, through the chair. Thank you for the question. So the high school health curriculum, Health Smart, is actually updated and very inclusive. My question would be, are the practices and their experiences in classroom, are they using the curriculum, is the question. And it's something that Nicole Veely, the Director of Health and Phys Ed, and I have talked about at great length. So I would love to follow up about that. I would love to get more detail if possible, because we've been very thoughtful about the curriculum for that very reason. But I really do appreciate that feedback, because that signals to me that there's a disconnect between what we're hoping to provide in terms of content and curricular resources and the experiences that students are having.
Thank you. So I will say I've been asked that question twice recently, and I did think that there was an update in the curriculum that happened, was it like a couple of years ago? Yeah. So, okay, I'll follow up with you. The other question, which is that they had is, and I will use the words that were used with me, is that education theory should be broader. And they gave examples of, if we get history about India, we only talk about colonization. So we don't really talk about the Indian culture. And so the quote that I got was, "It hurts to be excluded," quote unquote. And they felt that the curriculum was missing the complexity of the world or here in Somerville. And that they felt that that would also be good for mental health clinicians to understand the complexity and diversity that exists in our schools. So I said I would pass that on. If I could share some of the things they said on the city side, we need rent control. Public transit is unreliable. Football games should be actually in multi-languages. So that was, they thought that that might increase the fact that attendance is low. They love traffic calming and raised crosswalks and love pedestrian protected bike lanes, and they were talking about, the ability to access food in multi-locations. So to add on what was said earlier, there is a pantry which is set up similar to a market in East Somerville on Cross and Broadway Street, which is opened more frequently. So besides the outdoor markets that are having at the schools, there's also this ability to go to the Project Soup, which is located in a city building. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Ms. Patone?
Thank you, through you, Chair. The mayor sharing the fact that she wonderfully meets up with the high school students, it gave me a reminder of the Student Advisory Committee that somehow has gone dark, I think. I don't know if we've met at all this fall, so I really would put the request to the superintendent, the chair, to figure out how to reinitiate that, because that was really a great change that happened, I think, at the beginning of this year, and I'd love to see that. So thank you.
It is definitely on my radar, and I appreciate the reminder. Any other items from board members? Seeing none, Dr. Phillips, do we have any condolences? All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.